Mr. Speaker, ex-President Obama, the abortion president, has done serious harm. No human rights abuse, however, need be forever. And today we have an extraordinary opportunity. We have, I would submit, a duty to protect the weakest and most vulnerable, to reassert protections that have been sadly lacking for the last 44 years. Protecting unborn children and their mothers is the most important human rights cause on earth. And this week, on Friday, thousands are expected to march for life, march for this fundamental human right, the right to live. Now as never before, we must work, pray, and fast for that day when every life is cherished as a gift, every life loved despite one's disability, race, sex, color, religion, or condition of dependency. Every life welcomed, no matter the inconvenience. Earlier in this special order, Steve King talked about caring for people at every stage of development. Every stage. The unborn birth is an event that happens to each and every one of us. It's not the beginning of life. And again, ultrasound imaging of the unborn child has just opened up everyone's eyes to the little child, twins if there's two, that resides within. He also talked about, and I would agree with him, children with disabilities need to be welcomed. A prenatal diagnosis of disability should mean empathy and concern for the child, not exclusion or a death sentence, because every life is a gift. Mr. Speaker, it is very encouraging as to how many young people are stepping up to protect and lead in this human rights cause. Increasingly, the young people on college campuses, Students for Life, and so many young people in their 20s, the millennials, and the polling shows the millennials are pro-life, are stepping up, and they are becoming, Tom Brokaw often talked about the greatest generation. They are stepping up as the next greatest generation who, by their compassion, faith, and determination, will transform America into a culture of life. All of us in the pro-life movement are especially thankful for the growing number of courageous women who are silent no more. Some of the groups are called the Silent No More Awareness Campaign, for example. Women, all of whom have had abortions, have suffered psychological and emotional harm, and yet they, thank God, have found reconciliation and peace, often through faith. But now they blaze a hope-filled path for other post-abortive women to find healing, reconciliation, and inner peace. They admonish society not to offer the false solution of killing an unborn child. There are two victims in every abortion: the baby, the most obvious, but equally the mother. Women deserve better than the false solution of dismembering or chemically poisoning unborn children. The other side of the issue seldom talks about the child, if ever. Don't even use the word abortion much anymore, just choice or reproductive rights. And just refuse to accept or to acknowledge or to debate what the deed actually does. Children who have their arms and legs torn off their bodies by the abortionist, as well as a decapitation. Chemicals that literally starve the child to death. RU-46, euphemistically called medical abortion, like the other pills that are provided. First, the child starves in the womb, and then another chemical brings on a labor. For the pro-life movement, we all acknowledge that the way forward is fraught with obstacles that must be overcome. The promotion of human rights is never easy. The promotion of human rights is never obstacle-free. If past is prologue, the history of the pro-life movement, however, shows that we will never quit. Earlier today, the House voted on the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act, H.R. 7, to end taxpayer complicity and funding of abortion. I especially want to thank our very principled leadership Great people like the Speaker, Paul Ryan, Kevin McCarthy, our Majority Leader, Steve Scalise, our Whip, Kathy McMorris Rogers, and so many others who take a principled stand for the unborn and equally for their mothers. No matter what the Washington Post or the New York Times might say, they are willing to stand into the wind rather than to go along with it, because the sanctity of life, the preciousness of those children, and equally of their mothers demands it. So I want to thank them for their extraordinary leadership. And as we all know, the bill passed 238 to 183. The extraordinary news is about the Hyde Amendment and its consequences. It has saved the lives of over 2 million children, and that's a conservative estimate. It may be many more. Other funding bans at state level, as well as other funding bans in our federal policies, including the Federal Employees Health Benefits Program, have also saved lives because the money was not there to facilitate the demise, the violent demise of those children. Even the Guttmacher Institute, the former research arm of Planned Parenthood, acknowledges that about 25% of the Medicaid abortions that otherwise would have occurred do not occur. Those children go on to be born, and that is where the 2 million figure, about 60,000 per year children who evade the scalpel or the chemical poisoning of abortion. 40 years ago, Congress enacted the Hyde Amendment. It was wise. It's been continued every year. Now it will be made permanent if this bill were to become law. And we know, as was said during the debate by my friends on the other side of this issue, that they are determined to eviscerate the Hyde Amendment. And those 2 million children, had they had their way over the last 40 years, would have been killed. We also want to take abortion out of Obamacare. Obamacare, the president stood right at that podium, Mr. Speaker, in September of 2009 and said, under our plan, no federal dollars will be used to pay for abortion. We know that is absolutely untrue. He also did an executive order where he said the Hyde Amendment would be applied to the plans in the exchanges. So we went to the General Accountability Office, asked for a study. It took about a year. And they came back and said 1,036 insurance plans across the country paid for abortion on demand with taxpayer funding. H.R. 7, Title II, would end that complicity of the taxpayer with the procurement of abortion. Let me also say that we hope to bring up in this House a bill that was sponsored last Congress and is again today by Trent Franks of Arizona, a great champion of life, called the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, to legally protect most babies at 20 weeks post-fertilization. And of course, many of those kids die of dismemberment. And again, we need a national debate on abortion because the methods have been hidden by the facade of the abortion industry. They've been very good at cloaking, concealing, and diminishing any focus on what happens to the baby. Even when abortionists do ultrasound-guided abortions and the mother is there, semi-sedated, they turn the screen away from her so she doesn't see the dismemberment of the child because, obviously, as Dr. Nathanson once said, the founder of NARAL, and an abortionist who said that he came to the conclusion of having killed 60,000 children and then became a pro-lifer, he said if wombs had windows, if everyone, including the woman, could see the child, she would run out of that abortion mill. So again, I want to say thank you to Trent Franks, that I know he's here, and I hope that he will join us tonight. But he is led on Born Alive legislation, which is also transformative. Imagine that the President of the United States, the former President, Barack Obama, said that he would veto a bill that would provide a standard of care, including a right to private action, when the child is born alive from a later term abortion. We can't even help that child, and yet Obama, the abortion president, said, no, we can't.